Hello and welcome to this edition of A10 tournament preview for the 2026 A10 Championship. This is going to be a preview video where we have a couple of groups, and the first of which, me and Nick, break down our brackets for the A10 tournament coming up this week. Hopefully by the time we get this out, it's the day of, so it's tournament day. So happy tournament day to all who celebrate.
Yes, sir.
So let's get into our brackets.
You want to kick it off?
I'll kick it off.
Kick it off, sir.
So I already have mine pull up here. So we'll pull up mine here. We'll get it going. I will start with the tournament, or the first round of the tournament, the pillow fights, LaSalle and St. Bonaventure. I have St. Bonaventure in that. I think they will win one more for Mark Schmidt, and they will move on to face George Mason. They won't have the same luck in that next round, but the Richmond Loyola Chicago game, pardon me, not much excitement for it. However, I do think that Richmond will come away with the win there. When it comes to the following rounds, I have Fordham over GW, but I think we're talking about it, Nick. If GW is able to get past Fordham, they got some offense. They got offense. That's for dang sure. Defense, I don't know. I don't think so. No. So
No.
that'll be interesting. I don't have them getting past Fordham, though. So George Mason versus St. Bonaventure. This is where the Bonnie's road ends and Mark Schmidt's road ends. Just want to say, Mark Schmidt, I've been able to ask him a question a couple of times at press conferences over the last 2 years. Always a nice guy. Appreciate it for being nice to me, Mark Schmidt, and enjoy retirement. This is where your road ends, though. That is where I have George Mason winning. Then Duquesne, Rhode Island. We're going to talk about on the pregame show a lot more in depth, so if you want a more in-depth preview of that, just go over to the Duquesne versus Rhode Island pregame show here on DSTV. I have Duquesne over Rhode Island in that one, and simply because I think Duquesne played the worst possible game of basketball they ever could against Rhode Island and still almost beat them. Then they beat them by 15 plus in the first matchup of the two-game series they had in the A10 regular season.
Yeah.
I don't have them getting past VCU, though, and I'll clarify on that in a second. Davidson, I have taking their second-round matchup over Richmond. I think this Davidson team is really fun to watch, and they play some really good basketball, playing some good basketball right now. However, just not the best draw that I think they could have possibly gotten. So I'm going to explain. I got St. Joseph's after that. St. Louis and Fordham, welcome to the tournament, Salou. How about a win to greet you? They'll probably take care of Fordham. I don't have much concerns about that one. I think a lot of it is like, we picked Fordham in the last round, and kind of the brain is kind of telling you like, hey, maybe they are a little stronger. No. You think that until tip-off, and then you see how good this St. Louis team is. So I got St. Louis over Fordham. I'm going to take Dayton over George Mason. I wish I could take George Mason. I think that win against SLU means something, and I wouldn't be shocked if Dayton falls in the quarterfinal round. But as for right now, I'm going to stick with the Flyers. VCU Duquesne, I'm going to go VCU. VCU's just, I think, a better basketball team than Duquesne. They showed it in January, and I don't think anything has changed to tell me otherwise. I'm going to go with the Rams. Davidson and St. Joe's, I'm going to go with St. Joseph's. St. Joseph's has won 6 in a row, and they are extremely streaky to the point where they're on a good streak, right? Listen, they're very streaky. They're on a winning streak. They get a couple of days rest, too. They continue to practice in the area. It's going to be a nice buy for them that I think will end up benefiting them. They beat Davidson. They go on to the semis, and they win in the semifinals against VCU. I really like how the St. Joseph's team is playing. I have them in the final against St. Louis, who I think will take down Dayton. Once again, not overthinking this much, because I think when you start to overthink the brackets is when you get in a little bit of trouble and you might start to miss some picks. Conference tournaments are usually chalk, if we're being honest with ourselves. Once it gets to the end, tends to be chalk. So I'm not gonna make a mistake I've made in years past. St. Louis, St. Joseph's. I have St. Joseph's continuing their tear By this point, they will have won 9 straight games heading into the tournament, and good Lord, they would be a dangerous, dangerous opponent for any team that has to face them in the tournaments. Off the top of my head, I can't really give a good projection of where they'd be seated, but by that point, a 10 seed is quite frankly on the docket. Like, it literally is.
I would probably say 11, but I think it's definitely. It would definitely be scary to say.
It would, yeah. Like, they really couldn't. Honestly, maybe a 6 seed. The way the 6 seeds look as of, like, right now, like, Kansas is one of them. Kansas is the biggest mess I've seen in all of college basketball. Yet they're still a really good team, but they got a lot swirling around there. So a team like St. Joe's, or even a team that, like, could, quite frankly, take them down in this, like, in this A10 could be a team like Dayton, a team like VCU. But I think by the end of this, by the way, my prediction, I want you to pitch this in once you're done with your bracket.
All right.
I do think that the A10 will be a 3-bid league if this is how the tournament goes.
It's definitely going to be interesting.
I think, do you think, with the way I put this tournament, right, do you think that it would be a 3-bid league? Like, the way it is right now, like, VCU and SLU make the semis.
If SLU makes the finals, I mean, I feel like regardless, as long as they don't lose like them and VCU, as long as they don't lose their first games. But you'll see with mine. I think it's going to be a little more interesting, but I do see it possible as a 3-bid league.
Yeah. By the way, for Nick's bracket, I'm just glancing at this, a little preview. He has one of my Final Four teams in his bracket.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's a lie, 2.
Nice.
You literally have the same matchup up top, but different on the bottom. So let's see.
Very much.
Bring it up.
Actually, only one's different, I believe. But yeah, as we'll start, start with with Pillow Fight Day.
Final.
I do believe, like you, I do think Marsh Schmidt is going to get one last win.
One last hurrah.
One last hurrah, because I think LaSalle's been a mess this year. After Marshall went down in the game against us, this team just really does not have much going for it. And I just don't see a matchup where Frank Mitchell loses to Rob Dockery. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't think it's possible. If it does happen, you know what? Come back here and clown me all you want, LaSalle fans. But I don't see it. I see Bonaventure, as much as this year's been a mess for them.
I'm not sure they can really clown you for that if they only win one game.
But I think Bonaventure easily takes care of business here. I think they get this. They make this look easy. They get a nice, comfortable win. And then in the second game, unlike a lot of people, what you'll see, I took Loyola Chicago, and the reason being is because of what happened in our game. Listen, I'm dead serious. When the last thing you have to end your season is one of the most humiliating losses in probably the most humiliating loss in school history, I don't think there's coming back from that. I truthfully don't.
Double down on it. One of the most embarrassing losses in
NCAA
college basketball history.
I don't think there's coming back from that from Richmond. I genuinely think they are doomed. I just don't see it. I know they have decent talent like A.J. Lopez and Mike Walls, but I can't. I have no faith that they're going to come back and play competent basketball after taking a brutal loss like that.
Got to hit a hard reset.
So it's going to be wild to see that the 13th and the 14th seeds both win. I don't know how many times you'd see that in the end. In the A10. I don't think it's often.
I like it, though. I think you're right. I think that's something.
I don't think the difference between 11 and 14 is like that big.
I think you're right, though, on that, because I did forget about that a little bit. However, most teams collapse after that, and that's certainly possible. I just think Loyola Chicago's just been so bad.
Loyola's been really bad.
But
I also think that winning
I feel like it'd be a disservice.
I think that winning against GW might power something to give just a little bit of optimism going into the tournament. And
momentum.
Yeah, and I think momentum is
like
constantly for me is gonna be. It's gonna be one of the big things, except for one case, which we'll get to in a minute. Next is going to be, I think Fordham takes down GW again. I think the story here is when you take a brutal loss at the end of the year, I don't think there's coming back from that. I know that was a nice win for Loyola Chicago. That can't happen if you're GW. You would have clinched the 7th seed straight up. You would have passed us and clinched the 7th seed and had this match against Rhode Island, which would have helped you. You just screwed yourself completely in this.
Screwed the pooch.
Yeah, screwed the pooch. you're losing to Fordham. I just don't see it happening. I
No,
think Fordham's
I
defense.
will say, in fairness, they still would have been screwed because we beat Richmond.
Well,
However, let's just, for multiple purposes, that should have been the case.
yeah.
Duquesne should have lost that game, but like.
Yeah. So either way, I think Fordham gets the job done here. I really love what they are doing there. Even if it's not the prettiest system in the world, they play some very scrappy, very
effective,
ugly basketball at times.
It's effective in the ugliest ways.
They get results, so I have full faith that they are going to pull something out here. They're going to beat GW, but I could see where GW gets this and could get hot because it's desperation time. So, but I am saying Fordham takes this. George Mason versus Bonaventure. Mason's going to take it, even with the end of the year collapse that Mason was having. I think they turn it around with that St. Louis win. I see them getting the job done against a very beatable opponent because where teams like George Mason, like where I would say teams from like 7 down really or 7 up shine is depth. Bonaventure has a lot of front-end talent, but they got no depth, like absolutely zero coming off the bench, and that's going to kill them when they play a team like George Mason, who is a very, very deep lineup. One of the deepest, I would say, in the A10 for what it's worth.
Yeah.
It's just the star talent just hasn't, I think, produced to the level of where they needed to with George Mason at times. So I think they get it done with Bonaventure, no problems. Duquesne, Rhode Island, I'm just going to keep this one simple. I think Duquesne gets it done. I don't think they lose 2 in a row to Rhode Island.
I think, quite frankly, they have to.
They have to.
Is
I
the other
truthfully
thing,
see that.
yeah,
And then Davidson, Loyola, Chicago. Again, not going to overthink this. Davidson's a lot deeper. They're playing better. They have the better roster. But look out. Miles Rubin could give Davidson some problems, I will say that.
That's, for sure.
Because Davidson's rebounding has been very suspect at
tough.
times this year.
It's important to not forget how good Rubin is. Rubin's so good. It's just everything around.
Has not.
Yeah.
But as we get to the quarterfinals, I'll kind of go a little quicker through this.
We know these teams, man.
St. Louis.
We know these teams.
I mean, St. Louis, Fordham. I mean, kind of the same argument with Jack here and with probably a lot of other people. It's the best team in the tournament. They really need this game. They can't afford to lose this game if they want to be automatically in and not have to be like a Final Four in or something like that.
You can't be
one and done. After the year you've had and the bad stretch you're going through to end the year, you lost 3 of your last 5. You need this game if you want to convincingly stay in March Madness.
You got blasted by GMU, and I think
that was bad.
That's a big time loss. It shouldn't affect them as long as they win one more game, but if they don't, then
they're in big trouble.
Yeah.
So I think they get the job done. Mason and Dayton, I'm rolling with Dayton. Dayton killed them last time they played. And Mason, while they did turn around with a big win, I still just think have had a number of issues through this year, and I don't see that matchup of Allen Spatch versus Latong ending well. I really don't. I don't see it going well. And Javon Bennett's just I can't rule out a guy like him. He is probably, I would say, the best guard, I would say, in the A10. He's been that good when he is playing at his best. He's almost unstoppable sometimes.
Yeah.
He changes games. So I think Dayton's going to take against George Mason. VCU Duquesne, this is where Duquesne's luck runs out. I think Djokovic might genuinely be might genuinely be the best or the second best player in the entire A10. He's nasty. He is so talented. And VCU's lineup is incredibly deep. And in a case where Duquesne has really struggled with depth down the stretch, I think that lack of attrition is going to kill them when they need it the most. So I think VCU gets this done, and they pretty much, for this win, probably secure themselves a safe spot into March Madness. Davidson, St. Joe's. Now, here is where it gets fun. I think Davidson takes down St. Joe's. I really, really, really love how Davidson has been playing down the stretch. They also went 1-1 against St. Joe's. So they did beat them earlier in the year. I know St. Joe's is rolling with momentum, but I'm a firm believer that even if you're still rolling, I think this long break can sometimes just kill any momentum you have. It can cool anything off. You're all walking in with a fresh slate. And I think Davidson, with a big win under their I say big win, they beat last place Loyola Chicago, but a win under their belt is going to be able, I think, to outmatch St. Joe's in the defense that they've got. Because St. Joe's can play with some of the best, but I really like how Davidson's rolling right now. I believe fully in them.
I think they're a good all-around team. I think St. Joe's just... Listen, I yes, you do have the bye, but I don't think it's like baseball. I think
Yeah.
baseball is a week and a half almost. Like, that's a long time. I mean, it's almost a week. Or it is a week. Yeah, it's a week in baseball.
It's a week.
I mean, and a lot of those guys are checked out. St. Joe's was, not checked out throughout any of this. And when they started their run to get to the 3 seed was right at the end of the year. So it's not like a team that, hey, they maybe lost at the end of the year like St. Louis did. It's a situation where St. Louis is just, or St. Joe's is just a locomotive.
They are. I mean, I can see it.
Machine.
But
I can't speak. I want to say like something with motion. They are all of that right now. They got all the momentum in the world.
And I think for me, the reason I'm doing this is because I've also seen it. Like,
Wanna
at
be
least the last 2 or 3 seasons.
Because they want to be different. I'm like,
The last
no.
2 or 3
I see
seasons.
your
Yes, I
points.
want to be different. Well, no.
Well, you are.
The last
You're
2 or
being
3
different
seasons.
here with this pick.
The last 2 or 3 seasons, there has been at least one high seed that was rated lower, came up to the top, and ended the year in disappointment. I think of Richmond from a few years ago, who lost their first game. And
You know who was a 6th seed and won the tournament in 23-24?
Duquesne.
It's the Duke, so I
mean,
see it.
The 6th seed is, I think, the best spot to be in March. I mean, in the A10 tournament. So I'm a firm believer of that. And so going to the semis, St. Louis and Dayton, I think Dayton is rolling with house money. I think they smoked St. Louis. They exposed St. Louis's flaws to the front with between the turnovers and the cold shooting. When they get cold, they get ice cold. It gets really
Cold
bad
as
for
ice.
St. Louis.
Yeah.
And Dayton took full advantage of that with the run they went on. So I think they get it done. Dayton moves to the finals. And on the other side, while I think Davidson had an unbelievable run so far, I think this is where it comes to an end. I think they fall to VCU. I think VCU is just like playing so good, and they want to be securely in. They don't want to have to come down because since they're one of the last 4 in. So I think they're going to be playing probably the most aggressive of any team in the entire A10 tournament because they have, I think, the most to lose of anyone here. Personally, I'm a firm believer of that. If they don't go on a run here. And that's where I see the final being Dayton versus VCU, a rematch of what Friday was, and I'm rolling with the same winner. I'm rolling with VCU to take it all. I love how they have been playing. I love the rebounding ability. I love how deep this lineup is. I think VCU secures themselves an automatic bid. And if they were to do that, I truthfully think a 10 or a 9 seed is not out of the question for a team like VCU.
I don't think it is. I think that if they are able to go on a run like this and win the tournament,
I think a 9 seed is
would put
possible.
them at a 9. I would put them at 9. I think that's not the first time that's happened. With like an A10 tournament winner. Duquesne would have been a 10 seed, but they got the 11 seed.
Yeah.
Like, so that was like a whole thing to involve BYU, but like that was a whole thing. So, yeah, certainly a lot to look forward to in this tournament. That'll do it for me and Nick. Let's send it over to the rest of the team to give you their tournament predictions.
What's up, everyone? My name is Brendan Flato. This is Will McDonald. This is our brackets preview for the A10 tournament. Will, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll take over. I'll just once we get the bracket up and going. There we go. So just gonna start from the top down. LaSalle and St. Bonaventure, obviously one of the lowest seeds, 2 of the lower seeds in this year bracket. I got LaSalle in a close game there. Obviously, the St. Bonaventure coach recently had announcing that he would be retiring at the end of the year, so sad to see him go there. But I think LaSalle spoils the Bonnies' send-off run for their coach. So I got LaSalle against George Mason, and the second game, I got Richmond and Loyola Chicago, and I mean. I am a fan of chaos in this tournament, which will be seen in the later rounds, but I got Richmond taking care of business here against Loyola Chicago, and just going to move from Fordham down. Got number 8 Fordham against number 9 GW. I'm actually going to rock with our nation's first president here. Give me George Washington winning by. I'm gonna go with 10. I'm gonna go with a 10-point win against Fordham. Next up, George Mason against LaSalle. I got to rock with George Mason on this one. I don't see a possibility where I don't see a shot in which LaSalle has a chance against this George Mason team. So they'll set up an interesting matchup against them in Dayton. And our Duquesne Dukes versus the Rhode Island Rams. Give me the Dukes. I mean, they're just on a. I'm not going to say they're on a hot stretch, but they do need a redemption.
They won one game.
Okay. Hey, you win one game and you win 2 games. That's a winning streak. That's a winning streak. Yeah. So I got Duquesne with a redemption game against Rhode Island. Dave Dixon obviously with the miracle buzzer beater against Richmond in our previous game. I'd look for another strong effort out of him, and definitely look for the Williamses to get going. Davidson and Richmond. Again, I said I was a fan of chaos in this tournament. I'm willing to eat my words on this. I got Richmond beating Davidson, so they move on to the quarterfinals. Just from the top down. Again, I like chaos in tournaments, but I don't see St. Louis losing to George Washington. So I got St. Louis going to I got St. Louis going to the Final Four. George Mason versus Dayton. I think this will be one of the toughest, closest games of the tournament. That being said, I do have Dayton going to the Final Four to play St. Louis. VCU and Duquesne. Now, I've been getting a lot of heat for this take, and I'm personally not a fan of it. People are calling me crazy in the background. Some of the producers calling me wild for having this. I got Duquesne over VCU to move on to the Final Four. Call me crazy. I got faith in my school. That's as much as I'll put there. Richmond and St. Joe's. The Richmond run will fall at the hands of St. Joe's, in my opinion. So it'd be Duquesne, St. Joe's, and St. Louis Dayton in the Final Four. St. Louis, I'm just not sold on them. I think they kind of fallen apart towards the end of the season. Obviously, they have Robbie Avila, one of the best players in this tournament. But I think the St. Louis run ends at the hands of the Dayton Flyers. Dayton moves on to the final. Duquesne, as much faith as I have in them, I don't see them beating St. Joe's. So set up Dayton and St. Joe's in the final game, and I got the Red Hawks of St. Joe's. That's kind of been the running motto around here that the Red Hawks will not die, and I got to ride with the Red Hawks on this one. Brendan.
All right, so we'll pull up my bracket here. Well, we'll start with the blank bracket and move on. First round, LaSalle versus St. Bonaventure. You know, there's something that feels a little bit fishy about the retirement of St. Bonaventure's coach. I'm not sure that they're fully bought in anymore. So I've got LaSalle. It's not an upset. It's just 2 bad teams going at it. And then as we move down, Richmond and Loyola Chicago. Richmond, I think that the Dukes killed them. I think that you're up 30 points. They were winning 40-10. 40-10. And they lost. The Dukes basically at halftime are like, we're still in this game. We might be down 20 points, but we're still in this game because they're not very good, so we'll just come out and beat them in the second half. And that's what they did. Mm-hmm. So I think if you're Richmond, that basically just the Dukes told you that you're not good. And I don't think that even though Loyola Chicago's the worst team in the league, think that they can pull off one win and get that win over Richmond, who's just got to be depleted right now. Fordham, George Washington. This one's a toss-up in my eyes. You know, it really could go either way. I was kind of split. This was the only game I was kind of split on my opinion. But when I was typing out this bracket, Fordham was a lot shorter than George Washington, so we went with Fordham. Now, as we move down, George Mason versus LaSalle. Give me George Mason. I know they started off really hot. I know that after Duquesne beat them, they've been going downhill. But big win against St. Louis. They dominated them for that whole game. Mm-hmm. And I like their coach. I like the swagger that their whole team plays with. So give me George Mason to take that one over LaSalle. And then as we move down, game number 5, 5 p.m. on Thursday, Duquesne, Rhode Island. The 2 teams are 1-1 against each other. Each team has a win at their own home venue. It was a pretty convincing win for Duquesne. It was their first home win of the season when they faced off with the Rams. in Pittsburgh. Then they went out and probably played their worst game of the season in Kingston, Rhode Island. But look for them to rebound on what is basically home court. They'll have, you would assume, a lot more fans at the venue than Rhode Island will. With it being in Pittsburgh and Rhode Island being, it's not that far, but it's also like, it's far enough. And from Rhode Island, that's a little bit of a drive to watch a game you might not win. Moving on down, Davidson versus Loyola Chicago. I'm taking Davidson. I really like the way they play. You know, Duquesne was able to steal one from New Year's Eve, the first game of the A10 schedule, but then they came into the Cooper Fieldhouse and really showed why they're the 5th best team in this conference. And while I think they will be challenged, and this is the only win I'm giving them, I think that they've got Loyola Chicago in blowout fashion, like 30 points. And Loyola Chicago's not coming back from down 30.
They're not the Dukes.
No. Moving on. St. Louis, Fordham. It's not going to be close, guys. It's not going to be close. I'm predicting the final score might be close. Maybe St. Louis by 10. But I think at the 12-minute mark in the second half, game still might be close on the scoreboard. But you'll have a pretty good idea that St. Louis has just worn down Fordham to a point where they're not going to be able to compete in those final 2 minutes, and that's when St. Louis will add on some points, win by 10. Continuing on down, George Mason versus Dayton. These are two passionate fan bases. I'm going to take Dayton. I think that Dayton is the better team, but not by much. I could see this being the most competitive game we have in the tournament. Now, when you look at some of these other teams, you might not think that, but I think that this could be a really good tournament. I think that the crowd is going to be electric. For two teams who, they're obviously not from Pittsburgh. Dayton's not too far, and George Mason's a little bit more of a hike, but both fan bases travel well. They're very passionate. They love their schools. I think it's going to be a raucous atmosphere in the paint bucket for that game, and I've got Dayton narrowly beating George Mason. Continuing down, VCU versus Duquesne. Just like Will, not a lot of people want to believe me, but I think we're going to be hearing a little bit of bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Go, Duquesne! And I think Duquesne's going to take it over VCU in dramatic fashion. Give me Terrence Ginyard on a buzzer beater. And the Dukes will win. He's not going to miss it this time. David Dixon will be able to watch it go in and then celebrate. He won't have to do all the heroics again. And then, all right, we're moving down. Davidson, St. Joe's. St. Joe's is probably, Billy Lang obviously left before the season. Everybody thought no chance St. Joe's is going to be any good. No chance, right? Third best team in the conference. Give me St. Joe's over Davidson. In a 5-point win. Give me St. Joe's. All right, we're moving on. St. Louis is our first semifinal game. 1 o'clock, CBS Sports Network. Game 11, St. Louis, Dayton. Give me the Flyers. I think St. Louis is frauds. Not enough of frauds to lose to Fordham, but enough of frauds to lose to Dayton. And I think that I think that St. Louis will get a good traveling crowd because I'm not too familiar with the history of the Atlantic 10, but I'd assume this is probably one of the better teams that they've ever had. Mm-hmm. And this is probably one of their best chances of ever making the March Madness. I still think that they will make it to March Madness because they beat Fordham in that game. Or even if it's George Washington, they're going to beat whoever they play.
Yeah.
But I honestly think Fordham would have a better chance against St. Louis, but it's still not going to be close. But give me Dayton in another great atmosphere because I think both those fan bases will travel. That's what I was trying to say there. But give me Dayton. Give me the Flyers. I think the defense of St. Louis is fraudulent, and I think that Dayton's going to expose it. Duquesne, St. Joe's. You know, I really want to say Duquesne here. But that would make me a biased journalist here, and I can't do it. As much as I'd love to see David Dixon's dynasty here at Duquesne continue to grow, I don't think one man can beat somebody, and I don't know that enough people are going to step up. Maybe the only chance it happens is because Ginyard and Dixon have been solid. Jimmy Williams was solid most of the year. Apparently, he's been dealing with a little bit of a nagging injury, but that's not been totally confirmed, just alluded to by Coach Joyce in his press conferences. If Jimmy Williams can get healthy, Alex Williams continues to do what he does, and maybe you get like some key minutes from Jake DeMichael off the bench. I can see Duquesne maybe pulling it out, but a lot of stars would have to align for that to happen. So give me St. Joe's. The Hawk will advance. Dayton, St. Joe's in the final. I predict that the crowd will heavily favor Dayton because they are a much larger school than St. Joe's, and I'm not very good at geography, but I'd assume that they're closer given the amount of people that showed up at the Cooper Fieldhouse for each of those teams. But I'm gonna take St. Joe's. I think that they are. I mean, I think that this is probably gonna be a common pick, but I think that they're the third seed. But I take them as the favorite to win this one. Maybe not on the betting odds, but I take them as the favorite to win this, and I'm taking them to win my A10 tournament bracket. And yeah, both Will and I have St. Joe's. The Hawk will never die. At least in this bracket. But yeah, that will do it for our bracket predictions here. We're now going to send it to the next group.
Thank you, Brendan and Will. I'm Donovan, joined by Jason, to give you our final A10 bracket predictions. And I think we're going to send it over to Jason to start with his bracket.
Yes, so we are not the A10 mid-major enthusiasts like those people are. So what I'm gonna start off with is okay. So they're gonna take their time. So honestly, I don't know who's good or who's not in this, because out of the very few A10 games I've watched, I don't know if St. Louis is good. It's supposed to be my bracket, but you know what? I don't know if
There you go.
Ah, there it is. All right.
St. Joe's.
Anyway, so I did make a spelling mistake for St. Joseph's. I will own up to that. I thought autocorrect would do its thing. So for LaSalle and St. Bonaventure, I picked the Bonnies to win because, their coach is retiring, so a one-game revenge tour, I guess. And then Richmond and Loyola Chicago. Loyola Chicago, I've heard, is not very good, so Richmond should win that. GW, I got beating Fordham. I do have George Mason ending Mark Schmidt's career. I do have Duquesne beating Rhode Island. That, I think, is a lock I have. Davidson and Richmond. From the one game I saw Davidson play, there's a brand of basketball I love to play, and they play it well. So you know what, Davidson's gonna win that game. St. Louis and GW, I got GW winning that game. I'm a man of I want chaos all the time. So there we go. We got chaos again.
There you go.
Yep. George Mason and Dayton, I have Dayton winning that. VCU and Duquesne, I have VCU winning in a large margin, I think. Davidson and St. Joe's, I got St. Joe's winning that. GW and Dayton, I have Dayton winning that, and St. Joe's beating VCU with St. Joe's winning, because honestly, it's March. I don't really know what's going to happen.
Anything can happen in March.
Yeah, I mean,
including spelling errors on your champion.
Yes, that too. And the fact that they're celebrating is I'm mad now.
Hey, they gave you the chance to fix it.
Yeah, but did I want to? No.
I guess not.
Personal choice.
All right, well then I guess that leaves just me to give my predictions. Starting in the first round on Wednesday with the 11:30 a.m. game, the 12 and the 13 seed LaSalle and St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure is one of those teams that is not good, we can admit, but I believe. Well, yeah, they're both not. But they do have playmakers. I like Daryl Simmons. I like Frank Mitchell. I think this is a team that could possibly surprise people, win a game more than they should. That's not what I have. Well, I guess that is what I have them doing, because I have them beating LaSalle, who I don't think is much of anything. Going to number 11, Richmond, and number 14, Loyola Chicago. As you've heard on here throughout this broadcast, Loyola Chicago is not a good basketball team.
Terrible.
Despite Richmond's catastrophe of a game against Duquesne the other day, I'm going to take them to get one more win this season before it ends. Moving on to the second round on Thursday from top to bottom, number 8 Fordham and number 9 George Washington are number 9 George Washington. I'll admit are two teams I'm not too high on, but I have George Washington getting the upset because, well, we love upsets, we love chaos. We've said that, yeah. Number 5, George Mason is going to end Mark Schmidt's career as a head coach for St. Bonaventure. Duquesne and Rhode Island, these both feel like teams that can sort of win whenever they want to. I just think Duquesne has the edge here. I think David Dixon has a big game in his last postseason as a Duquesne Duke. And Davidson, Richmond, again, Richmond, I mean, a collapse is inevitable after what just happened against Duquesne. Up, 30-plus points?
They were up 40-10 at one point.
Yeah, I mean, I turned it on, and they were up 42-13 over Duquesne. And if you didn't see, they ended up losing in the final 0.2 seconds to a David Dixon putback. And Davidson is another fun team in this tournament that feels like they could win anytime if they get hot. I'm going to take them, number 6, Davidson. I'm going to take them to beat Richmond and move on to the quarterfinals. In the quarterfinals, we have number 1 St. Louis finally playing their first game against number 9 George Washington. This has been, without a doubt, the most dominant team in the A10 this year, and I have them moving on against number 9 George Washington. George Mason and Dayton, I have the upset. I think Corey Mincy has a big game for George Mason and pushes them forward to a semifinal game against St. Louis. VCU and Duquesne, I think this is a story, someone said it before, of just VCU being the more dominant team, the better basketball team. They have better players, they have the better resume, and I'm going to take them to move on against Duquesne. And Davidson and St. Joseph's, that's usually how it's spelled.
Oh, thank you.
Jason.
Thank
yeah,
you.
no problem.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to take St. Joseph's to secure their spot in the semifinals. I didn't want to have all top 4 seeds, so I'm glad this is how it worked out. St. Louis, while they were dominant, we just saw an absolute, dominant performance by George Mason against St. Louis to end the season. And while they only played one time in the season, and it's hard to, go and sweep a team in any sport, I'm going to take George Mason to do just that. It's not like it was a close game. It was an absolute blowout for George Mason. I'm going to take them, maybe not to blow them out, but to get the win again against St. Louis. VCU and St. Joseph's, I'll tell you, VCU is probably the team I'm most impressed with in the A10. They have a very solid resume, and they play well in March. We've seen it in past years, specifically even last year. I'm going to take them to move on to the championship against George Mason, where, as you can see in big text, I have VCU winning. Look for big performances from Terrence Hill. I think he's their best player, and I think he comes to play this March. And I think that about wraps up Duquesne's A10 predictions for 2025. Anything else, Jason?
Nah.
All right, well, that does it for us. Thanks for watching.